This is the Real Mom Hub.
Keep listening for relatable content.
Hi. We are very excited for our lineup in 2025. Get jacked. Buckle up. Everyone get stoked. The theme is matrescence, otherwise known as matrescence.
Which is, in case you're just tuning in, the transition into motherhood.
Yes, and all of it, all the things it encompasses.
So similar to adolescence, which we all understand that word, matrescence is something that we don't hear often. And matrescence is sort of the adolescence of becoming a mother.
There are a lot of parallels. Your values are totally shifting. Your body changes. Your hormones are swinging wildly. You're reevaluating your community and your needs and your different identities, how you show up in the world. It's a big thing. So we're really excited to shine a light on that phase of this journey because we are fresh mothers ourselves. So as we're on this matrescence journey, it's really important, I think, to talk about matrescence because, at least for me, I've leaned so heavily on my husband, Kyle. He's been an exceptional partner. And I don't think it's fair or balanced or healthy to only talk about matrescence. I think we're missing a huge part of the conversation if we're not also highlighting what's happening to our partners.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know there are a lot of single mothers out there as well. And I'm in awe. Like, you are just superheroes. I don't know how you do what you do.
I literally don't know.
No, I really, right. So hat is off to you. But for those of us who do have active, engaged partners, let's include them in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of conversations going on about the mental load and who should be doing this and who should be doing that. And we all got to hear each other and work together. So I'm really excited to get his fresh take on matrescence.
Matrescence. Did we coin that, or is that a term?
I don't know.
Someone already said it.
Probably.
Maybe we're saying it.
We could be. We could be. I think I'm going to learn a thing or two, though. So I'm excited.
Me too. And he even had his own questions, right? Like we said, here's an outline to both of our husbands because Kevin will be on soon.
Yes.
Here's an outline. What are you thinking? And I loved how he was like, boom, 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 boom. We have to talk about these things because it is not maybe as much of a physical journey for them.
Sure.
But there's so much other change. So yeah, I'm pumped.
Also, remember when I was pregnant and remember when I was postpartum? Would you want to take care of
me? No, dear Lord. I mean, in your defense, you were basically like, who's the purple girl in Willy Wonka that blows up?
Excuse me?
Like the girl that turns into
Violet?
a blueberry.
Violet, you're turning violet? Are you... Explain yourself.
You just kind of, you're like this little tiny person and you just sort of like ballooned.
I'm getting roasted. Can I hang up? Can I hang up on my own podcast? Are you kidding?
Is Kyle there?
No, you haven't sent him the link yet.
Oh, shoot.
Let me do it again. Whoa.
There you go.
Oh, hey.
And then Emily said, hot hub's in the room.
I did say hi. Because, hot hub's in the
room. For those of
you
listening, I have a matching 3-piece suit on and a top hat, and there's like a little parrot on top of the top hat.
And that's what really gets Emily going.
Yeah. Fake. All of it is false.
Oh, what did you say to him earlier today?
What?
When you were going on your walk? What did she say that was so horrifying? I was on the phone.
She addressed me as maybe like Kieran in some capacity.
Oh, I think she called you a good boy. I think that's what.
Woof.
I can't believe that you said that in public.
It was bad.
I said it like trying to be a little
public roasting,
but it came out so much grosser than I ever thought it could.
This is also when we were going on a family walk and she had her AirPods in. And so I'm on this really nice walk with Kieran and Emily. Like I'm just walking next to this crazy person because
she's talking
on the phone. Like, this is nice.
I'm so
you do what you can, right? When you have a little baby,
You do.
You do
what you can.
So, Emily, do you have any sort of intro you'd like to do, or are we just skipping that since we?
You know what? I skipped an intro. Everyone,
Great.
this is my husband. He's my best friend. He's an exceptional person. I'm really excited for y'all to get to know him a
Except for
little
when he
bit.
moves his mic while you're
Oh my
talking.
gosh, yeah, you know about.
I was turning up the volume. Sorry. Do it again.
Everyone's gonna hear a lot about him, anyways. So
Oh boy.
it's nice to introduce him to everyone.
Mr. Kyle Erickson.
He takes a manly wave, a very manly wave with both hands. Dons his top hat.
With a parrot.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Erickson, when you became a father, what is something that shook you to the core?
Oh my god. So this is a heavy hitter for me. I feel like maybe a preface would be Emily and I were just talking yesterday, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was like excited about making Kieran a friend. Like, we didn't know who Kieran was when he was in your little bell, which is where babies live in the belly.
Although we did just clarify Emily's was not little. In fact, I may have called her Violet from Willy Wonka right before you got on.
Yeah, she went into great detail.
Oh, I.
Okay, back to you.
So what shook me to the core, and I don't know if Em knows this, is it was the moment after. So we were in the operating room, and Kieran had been removed from Emily in the way that he was, and Kieran was on a table, and Emily was on a table, and I was walking back and forth between now these two people that are both mine.
Oh.
I don't own them, but like they're my people.
Yes.
And that prior to that occurring, he was in M's womb. I'm going to use the right term. And I couldn't, I could do things for her that would potentially impact him, like read little stories and whatnot. But yeah, that shook me because I had to be, I don't know if caretaker is the right word, but I was totally papa bearing over both of my humans.
Was it like that just huge weight of responsibility?
I think protective nature, like nothing's gonna happen to my people, because like I knew that I couldn't do anything, right? Like M was, what's the term? Hemorrhaging? Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. And then Kieran, I think, was having some feelings up on his table, and so I remember walking back and forth between the two because they were far enough apart where like I couldn't just be with both of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a great leading question.
Did you watch him come out? Like, did you watch them cut her open?
I don't remember seeing them make the incision. I do remember him being pulled out. I remember like watching M's body shake as they were trying to like get him out and mimic a vaginal birth and everything.
Oh.
So like I saw that, and then I saw when he was pulled out, and then I looked to see like what was going on down there after they did pull him out, because I just felt like I needed to know. Like I'm maybe particular in this way, but for the whole thing I was taking notes. Like labor was 54 hours and I was taking notes on like who's coming in, what's going on. So I felt like I could ground myself and like, well, at this point this happened, and I could like be an advocate for both of us. I looked, maybe not a great idea. They make you sit down because I guess some people will faint.
I was going to say, I feel like majority of men would pass out.
Yeah. I think I was too tired to pass out.
Yeah, fair, honestly.
I do need to jump in here just for our listeners. Our birth was classified, like medical professionals in the hospital came up to us later and was like, I just need you to know that we would classify this as like medically traumatic. Like it was not normal. We did not know. We thought we were going to have an unmedicated. You were there in the room. We were supposed to have an unmedicated natural birth from the birth center. So this was all a surprise. And I just need to call out Kyle because it was 54 hours of labor before we met Kieran, and he was awake with me that whole time.
Yeah.
Essentially. So he had been.
And you slept for part of it too, which is fine.
So sue me. through very strong contractions. We were monitoring them internally at that time. I would like to add. That's how time it was. But but you had been tracking. You'd also seen me through an emergency gallbladder surgery like years earlier. So you knew that, and this, I just want to make this note for any partners and women going through this. Even though we do have very highly trained medical professionals, it is really important to track what they're doing because there are so many of them. Things just frankly get lost in the hospital and potentially miscommunicated.
I was going to be diplomatic too, and I was really going to talk about that. But I would say one thing that I've gone down,
Say it.
not a rabbit hole on, but so like my family has high blood pressure. So there was a point, I don't remember when it was, but I kind of nerded out about this. And where the cuff is, like getting a correct blood pressure reading, and everyone should go look this and talk to their doctor about it. But you know where the cuff is, how strong it, like if it's the right size, where your arm positioning is, if you were just moving around. Anyway, it all makes a huge difference. And so I thought for me that was my biggest win, not win, but I think just in the whole process, there were a couple readings that didn't make any sense, and the cuff wasn't even on there right. And so I was like, hey, could we do this reading again? Let's get this cuff, and I think that helped. Alleviate maybe some interventions that would have had to happen had they stuck with that blood test method.
Relevant because I had preeclampsia.
Yes.
And right before you were on, Kyle, Emily and I were talking about how we can't imagine how women do it by themselves, like how single moms do it. And just hearing you say something like that, I mean, I don't do my job perfectly all the time, right? Like we're all human. So as much as we want to assume our medical professionals do, they literally can't. Like they're human too.
Yeah.
So it's so important to have everybody that can advocate for you in that room because it's just such a huge transition into this new life. And your recovery from that will also affect how you can emotionally process this new human and like go through matrescence and putrescence. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously you don't want to be, you want the least intervention possible anyways, just for your own healing, but that just affects so much. So yeah, there's just countless reasons why it is important to advocate, and amazing that you were like that on top of it.
Yeah, he was exceptional.
Okay, so we get through a traumatic birth that we're just gonna move right along. and then
I got my questions. I'm just gonna be real. They sent me the questions so I can prepare. And like I was just taking some notes, and I was like, okay, if I'm gonna cry at any of these questions because I cry so easily, it's probably gonna be this one.
Okay, birth happens. Anything else you want to share about the birth? Actually, I mean, the focus is putrescence. So whatever that means to you, becoming a father, and that birth was huge and monumental in some difficult ways. So
it's a good question, and maybe this will spark different conversation or maybe something else. But I would say, reflecting on the birth and just how my brain works, like I'm kind of slow to the uptick sometimes. Just I take a lot to process. I take
true it all. Okay, that might be true.
I take time to process. Emily had, 9 months of gestation.
Yeah.
So like the body changes. Like so much is happening and feeling and you're going through. And then all of a sudden, the baby's out and I can finally, get my hands on something. And so I take my top hat off. There's this time piece where I can only do so much, which is to show up really well from Emily, my partner. And then the baby's out and it's like, okay, now I can feel my fatherdom. And even that, the breastfeeding, like me as a dad, I don't have that going on. That's such a connecting point for like early on when the baby is breastfeeding so much. So yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of things that are specific to a mom where there's time to kind of sit with that and feel that coming. In a way, maybe I'm still in shock. I don't know. So
what's one thing that surprised you about fatherhood?
Just looking at him and just the pure joy that I get from what I'm going to call nothing, right? He could stand there. He could be standing there.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is it. Yes. Give me
Yeah.
more of that. You're gonna take it. You're taking a step. I can't handle it.
It's the best thing to ever happen.
So
Yeah.
that's a huge surprise, I think, at how that still happens.
I remember with Charlie, because he was not planned and like I was panicking. Like it was exciting, equal parts with just terror. What happened? What have we done? Why did I smoke that cigar? Like, what is happening? And I remember
That's not how you get pregnant.
there was one night in
Not a
particular.
metaphor.
There
Oh,
was one night in particular. Oh,
Did you just get the metaphor? Goddess?
okay. There was one night in particular where I was like just so I mean, I was just out of sorts about the whole thing. And I had this dream, and I dreamed that I was just sitting on the couch and my future child, it wasn't clear if it was a boy or a girl, but it was like about 2 or 3, like probably 3, just like ran into the room, and I had a glimpse into that love and
hmm,
just like that pure joy. Like I remember I woke up and I was like, I felt like what it was like to be a mom. I told
When
Kevin, like, I can do
that's
this.
wild.
I can't wait for this feeling. And that is the feeling. Like now that I've had a child, I'm like, yeah, that was it. It was like such just like elation's the wrong word. Like I don't even know how you describe it, but yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
were you pregnant or was
Hmm.
he still a baby when you had this dream?
I was pregnant
You were
because it was in
so
the apartment.
okay.
So I was
Okay.
second or third trimester, I think.
Whoa.
Not wild.
You're feeling yourself, and you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
dang.
Yeah.
You woke up, your hands were just like rubbing your stomach.
It is like it's a chemical hit, I think. That kind
Yeah.
of joy. Like it's like a drug, I think.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean,
surprising,
somehow
like every day
yeah.
that it keeps happening. So
Yeah.
I also think it's really funny. I don't know what the science is, but like I get some of that from Kieran in a way that I don't think I would get from other babies.
mm,
Like I don't know
Agreed.
what. Okay, so we talked about the like beautiful, joyous moments. What are some reoccurring discomforts? You put
Ooh.
this on. So you must have had some in mind.
for the listeners at home, I'm looking off in the distance pensively. I wrote sleep and motivation.
Oof. Oh
I
yeah.
think those are both pretty challenging when you have such a cosmic shift from not having a kid and not having that responsibility to then, trying to craft a routine that is nothing that you've ever known or experienced before. Maybe you did in your circle, but I think moments of discomfort all kind of stem from lack of sleep and then
Yeah.
just like the energy that it takes to keep showing up and doing good work. And um, yeah, that's been some discomfort.
Some. I feel like some is an understatement. Okay, so
Yeah.
what is at least one thing that is not talked about that should be regarding fatherhood, becoming a dad, any of this stuff?
I was going to say, hey, before we start, can we just look at some of these questions that maybe I don't have a great answer for? And this was one of them.
Okay,
But
great. That's fine.
what I will say is that I don't know. And I think a lot of this for me is just not much exposure to. Weren't people in my immediate circle that were going through fatherhood. I don't have a good knowledge base for what isn't talked about out there. I didn't take action to seek out, like, hey, what are dads thinking or feeling? I read a
Mm.
book. I don't remember the name of that book, but our
The
friend,
birth partner one?
yeah, oh yeah, thank you. Um, we'll link that in the show notes, everyone. But I read that one because it was given to me by a midwife friend who, shout out Carly. Thank you so much for that one book that I read. And, I think what I learned most from that is like every birth is different, which I've heard a lot before. Every birth is different. So, it's, I think, really just about being in tune with your partner. And, I think you can read all the material or like watch YouTube, like whatever that is. But I think really the work is you're talking to your partner and like you're learning how you're gonna do this.
What about actual fatherhood? Because I think matrescence is longer than just the birth, at least matrescence, you know.
And that's the other thing. I don't have a circle of dads. Like my one touch point was Kevin, your lovely husband, who and I just, I watched him. You guys are obviously the reason that we have a child right now because like you did it first.
The only reason.
We weren't gonna do it first. We were terrified. But then we saw you two young whippersnappers do it so beautifully. And like, when I think of Kevin, when we were living out in Seattle, come back to see, you with Charlie. And I was like, wow, like, look at these guys doing this thing. And that was huge for me just to see, like, you just show up well for your partner and then you show up well for your tiny human. And that's really all you can do. I would say my answer for this whole thing has been not great because I'm not exposed to it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't have a big circle and I don't, similar to like, a mom has the 9 months of lead up, the body's changing. Like there are so many questions where the dad, like, I didn't have much going into it. Like I read books and I think I talked with Emily, but I would say, I've not really dabbled in that whole, hey, other dad, what's this like for you? Because it's also just so individual. Like I feel like my relationship with Emily, I don't know if I have anyone that I connect with that's a dad that has a similar partnership and not in a negative or positive way. It's just like, a lot of that is, I think, up to me and her. And so, yeah, I don't know. And I'm my own father too. So I think once we get past this kind of support staff phase and he's like in school or like
support staff.
Like we're his support staff. Is that your reference?
Or his support staff. I'm sure I'll have a lot more questions. And I think then when he's in this circle of kids and, these kids are doing different things and they have parents and that will kind of breed maybe some better questions for myself of like, oh, when this happens, how do I approach this? And
I feel like dads don't talk about being dads unless it's like, here's the funny shit that happens.
Yeah.
Is that true?
That's a good question. And
yeah,
I definitely want to circle back because I need to hear the answer, but I need to, like, I'm very confused, frankly, as I'm listening to you talk because I'm like, wait, we have two couples that we're very, very close to who had their first child like months after Kieran. Are you talking about not having dad friends prior to Kieran coming or like now? Because
yeah, but even with those close relationships that I have, I don't typically talk about dad questions. I think we can say, oh, my kid's here, he's walking, or it's more data versus, hey, I feel this way about this thing. And like, I can see you red when Kieran is throwing all of his food, washing his tray with his hand going, I see red. But I'm not like, I don't have a productive way to talk to another dad about that because it's like, well,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. Like, take the trip. Like, I don't know. Does that give a little color to your point, Emily? Because it is a good one. I mean, that's why it was difficult for me to answer anything, like give a coherent answer because I don't call up and be like, wow, I'm experiencing this today with my son. I feel like it's less. Yeah, you guys. There's just so much happening with your bodies that I don't have that connecting piece.
Sure.
Which other moms do have that unifying thing where I think being a dad, because we don't have that physical aspect, for me at least, I don't know if, I connect with people different emotionally. So, and that's just not an area that I've learned to talk about yet and feel like I don't.
Do you feel like you need to talk about it?
Not really.
Yeah.
Like, the big swings in emotion that I feel are joy, which I can share. Like, I can be like, wow, it's just so joyful. Or really mad, like with the food thing. But I don't think there's not yet any like actionables that another dad could say.
There's not a lot of like parenting where you could be like, I need a tip for this.
Yeah.
or with fresh motherhood, there's a salve for that? Or have you tried this exercise? Or have you seen this clothing brand? Or have you, I mean, I guess those are kind of a lot of the things we talk about. I do just want to take a second, Kyle, to refresh you on putrescence.
Thank you.
What the
The physical, psychological, and emotional changes of becoming a father.
You had it ready.
I wrote it down. Thank you.
Emily's apparently looking for different answers from you, so maybe she should start asking.
Well, she knows she's got to keep me on track. But it's
so fascinating hearing this from you. This is another reason this is such a fun episode for me, because I'm just like, oh my God, like how is your life not completely turned on its head? And I know, like, we were just talking about this over dinner tonight, actually. There are people who need to speak in order to think, like me. Like, I talk in my head to myself when I'm ordering my thoughts, or I put them in a grid. Or there are people who need to think in order to speak, and that's you. You process quite a while and are thoughtful before you feel the need to use your words.
nodding head in approval. Yes.
Right? I just was going back to the definition because if I look at your life, I knew you for 7 years before we were married 7 years before we had Kieran. And I'm like, emotionally, life is so different for you. Hormonally, you definitely deal with my hormones. Socially, that your life's totally different as well.
We also moved, I think, where we had kind of two major cosmic shifts.
True.
Where, yeah, I don't know. And then I reflect on, before you have a kid, you don't know what it's like.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, as you became pregnant, I didn't have anyone in my circle to be like, oh, Emily's pregnant. Like, what's this like? I mean, we had friends that had babies, but they were also like older and they kind of been through that, and they weren't people that I talked with on a regular basis in a way where I'm like, oh, how's your kid? And I think when you don't have a kid, you're like, your kid's good, right? Like it wouldn't go much further than that. And then you have a kid and you're like, oh, all of this is something I could never have thought about. And I'm not future focused, which Emily might know, in a way where I kind of just like, you take it as it comes. So is that surprising still?
I feel like we've said the same thing for matrescence. Like, you really can't actually know. And maybe the reason that we talk about matrescence more is because it's just so jarring on women.
Yeah.
I'm hearing from you, from our research with one participant. Matrescence just isn't as jarring. Is the kind of what I'm getting from your experience.
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like if I dug into it a bit, like, oh, woe is me. Like, I didn't have a huge shift to my body. Yeah, my sleep schedule's wonky. Like, I really want to show up well for Emily. It's totally fished up. But yeah, I mean, what y'all go through is, and especially early on, right? Like, you have a period for so long and then like you don't. And like that could be a question. You're like, wow, like I had this thing, and then your body just changes so rapidly. I feel like there's a lot of, it's just so different than putrescence. To me, honestly, the word is putrescence an actual thing?
We don't know.
Putrescence.
I would kind of be like, that's society these
what
days.
What is putrescence?
Did I say putrescence?
Wait, let me look this up.
No, Emily just said it, and it's really gross.
It's so gross.
Putrescence.
If that's what this podcast is about, I am gone.
Okay.
So dadtrescence, the physical, psychological, I'm like, yeah, you can get a dad bod, but that's because like you're not. I mean, you're not sleeping
and you don't have motivation.
Yeah, there's so many things which, yeah, I don't know if it hits the same way that matrescence is like this.
Watching a brother-in-law go through the birth/early dad years, what are things that stand out to you?
And thinking about it now, we were gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to remember also because my memory is destroyed since having a child. But
there's no change. There's no change except that I can't remember anything.
There's no change. Well, that's sleep deprivation. I'm like, well, I could go to bed earlier. I think with both, I mean, it's really not about the dad, but it's about the whole family for me. Are you all connecting well? And I felt like when we come back for our little snapshots, just to see this cute little young family. They bought a house. They're holding their little babe. You were younger, and you're younger than us. So just to watch you guys do it so beautifully and like do all of these things so quickly for me was just like go get them. Like it was just really
Wow.
inspiring to watch. And I think at that point for me, I knew that I always wanted to have kids, and that's kind of when Emily and I think I started bringing it up to Emily more. She's like, can I get kids? When can we have a kid?
I want one.
I want one too. And
I don't
yeah,
remember you approaching it quite like that, but
I
yeah.
don't know, just watching Kevin be Kevin. It seemed like he was present and just Kevin. He was just Kevin. It was just more of a vibe check, which is like, wow, they have this kid, and it really seems like they're still kind of firing on all cylinders with each other and with this third saying.
It's
Even though,
really funny because it's not how it
I know,
was, but
yeah, and that's not also something probably that he and I would have dug into at the time, or yeah, just when you're in the thick of it early on, it's not like you want to. At least I don't want to talk about all these what could be kind of negative emotions or kind of like like I can't believe this is happening. I don't know. There's enough going on where I feel like to keep the outside noise maybe a little bit at bay and just make sure that the team is working well. So that it just felt like you guys were all showing up for each other really well.
so how do you, because you and Emily are such a team and you've worked on that so much before having kids, and Kevin and I have like had to figure it out. How do you feel like you really showed up for Emily and her journey?
I think my big one that I'm working on now is trying to alleviate the mental checklist that
Mm.
I know that she holds for everything ever, and really trying to be proactive about getting Kieran's stuff ready. If we're trying to head out the door, so I think that stuff and really being thoughtful of like, okay, food, clothes are in the shoes. I don't need him to wear shoes in the car, but like get all the stuff that I know that Emily wants for him, so he's prepped for success, and to do that so she can start to be a human, like her own person, and have different thoughts than like, what are we going to do for dinner? Like, how are we going to navigate this situation? So I feel like that is something I'm still working on, but I'm hoping is Emily's concern.
Honestly, that one's huge. I'm going to be honest because it's new. I think
Yeah.
we were married. We had our 7th wedding anniversary the day after Kieran was born. So, and we put a ton of time and effort into our marriage, which has been so rewarding and just such a great journey. So, certain things like advocating for me in the hospital, responding to my needs, hearing me, understanding where I'm at on any given day and like how he can be in partnership, he already just does that naturally. He's really just an exceptional partner. So it's you add a baby, I think the biggest changes are we've had to figure out how to prioritize each other with like we have to prioritize each other. We never had to work at that piece before. And now I think Kyle was the first one who recognized that we were the dopamine hits that we used to get from each other when we got home from work at the end of the day are now mostly coming from Kieran.
Mhm.
So intentionally connecting with each other and stepping away from the drug is
Away from the drug.
an ongoing thing. But frankly, him doing these small things and really understanding the mental load from the get-go is huge because it's changes my mood daily. Like when I feel like I can trust him to do the little things, I know he has the big things. I don't worry about the big things. He's shown me time and time again. The little stuff is huge because it's new because I used to manage all that myself, frankly.
And that was fine.
And it was fine.
Yeah.
And now I will say, because the mental load is trending all over social, at least, and we're even having more journalists pick up on it, this concept of the mental load. And I get a lot of noise on social about how our men are falling short or how women are having a really hard time talking to their men about the mental load. And I'm sure that's very true and unfair and objectively bad for a lot of people. But I would like to say that I'm intentionally letting go as well and letting him do these things on his own.
And it might be different
It's always different,
than how you would do
honestly.
it.
Fine, but you have to do that. I think if we're gonna ask men to take on the mental load, we also have to watch it happen and celebrate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, neighbors.
You're welcome.
Been playing the game.
My one mental load was actually talking to my other mental load the other day, and he was just kind of like, "Hey, get out of your head. Just check in with Emily. Is she doing okay?" But yeah, I think like knowing my deficits in our relationship, and deficit maybe is too strong of a term, but just knowing where I know that I need to up my game. I think that's what I've been focusing on, and hopefully trying to show up for him really well.
So do you feel like your just like personhood, your identity has shifted since being a dad?
Yes. Final answer. Yeah, I mean, I think, showing up for your partner when it was just the two of us, and I wasn't I just wasn't future focused. And I think there were a lot of things where in the relationship, Emily's really good at it. It seemed like she kind of naturally gravitated towards planning and like, gets excited about the details of the planning and like building out a life in a way where I was just kind of like, hey, this is cool. You wake up,
Works
okay.
for
And
me.
yeah, exactly. And then when you have a kid, it's just such a shift in where's your focus, right? Because especially early on, there's just so much change going on with the sleep schedule for everyone, the feeding schedule.
Why does your
Emily,
wife's face look like that right now?
I'm really not sure, but
Doing great.
thank you so much.
I'm just
You're
shook right
welcome.
now. I'm like so shook.
And so, like, knowing that how much food she needed because she was breastfeeding, I'm trying to remember a moment where it's like, um, where it really hit me. But again, I think it's just looking back at my prior dad self and being like, oh, like I really need to consider all of these things so that it doesn't just fall on Emily. Does that address your question?
Well, just do you feel like your identity shifted?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
final answer. He meant it.
I did. I really did.
Right,
I'm
Emily, explain your face.
so shook right now because when I hear, do you feel like your identity shift? Like like it shifted after you had a kid. Like I'm thinking about my experience and I'm like, yes. It took me over a year to even remember who I thought I used to be before I had it. I look at the this color blue in the sky and I'm like, that's a different blue than before I had a kid. Like everything's so different. And it's just so fascinating to hear you say, I mean, you're literally listing tasks that happen in your life that are new and you're talking about skill sets that you're trying to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, thank God. Like, I feel like people could think we're about to roast the mental load and go back and harp on that on men. But, like,
No.
can you imagine if both partners, majority of relationships, both partners had this identity crisis? Like, that would be a disaster. So, as you're talking through that,
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, truly, thank goodness. But I am also like, how?
That probably helps me
Yeah.
answer the question better too, because I did know that I had to be really steady. I think
Oh,
because
yeah.
I mean, the 9 months leading up, the birth was traumatic, like all this stuff where I felt like, hey, I just got to be solid, and I need to make sure that I'm showing up well.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing huge. It is just the easy, mundane things where I feel like that is my most impactful way to show up for Emily.
I mean, that is spot on the money. And Cal, that's a really good call out. We do need the balance. We need the different perspectives.
Yeah, it would be a disaster if
I
we
would,
didn't.
yeah. I can say firsthand that you've been such a solid rock, and I've needed you, and I've needed you to be that. And thank you so much for being that.
Aw, favor.
Kyle's face is, for the listeners at home, Kyle's face is blushing. There's a slight tear in both eyes. I love you, Emily. Thank you.
I love you too.
Thanks.
Gross. Kyle, I'm gonna throw you a curveball. This wasn't on your list
I'm
of questions.
so good at questions. Let me just shut my notebook because
No,
it's really.
you're gonna love this one. Ready?
Okay.
None of the women we've interviewed have like been able to answer this quickly.
Oh.
Ready? What makes you feel beautiful?
Oh my goodness. When I get a haircut. Because A, makes me feel good. B, I know that when Emily looks at me, she thinks he's putting effort into himself.
I do.
And I like that.
I do.
Hmm?
I like that,
So
and I think it.
it's like a
Mhm.
double win for me when I get a
Man.
haircut.
He just answered it right away.
He did. Yeah, that was easy.
Okay. What new traits do you have since becoming a dad?
I mean, my jokes are spot on.
Your jokes have not changed. Can we up for the listeners? He was
Sorry, I'm getting some feedback in my mic. So my jokes are spot on.
dad jokes are for his whole life.
What traits? New traits? I do feel like recognizing my. Is there a better word than deficit, Em? What do you think? Like what I need to work on in a relationship. I could feel that more, and I could feel why it made such a difference to you. I feel like maybe before having a kid, you could say something to me, and I'm like, no, I don't do that, or like, no, I'm gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, like thank you for the feedback. Actually, not relevant to me. Sorry, it's
Yeah,
relevant
but
to you.
now I'm like, I should really sit and think with what her words are saying.
Uh-huh.
And if I don't know, I should ask. But I feel like that is a new trait, which is I'm maybe not such a blunt instrument, and not to short sell myself, but I do think that that's been a big trait change where I see this big picture now, which is like we're a family, and
Yeah.
so
Well, and a
that
team. Like you kind of have to be.
yeah.
Like I said, you were a good team before, but like it didn't really matter that much if you were a good team before.
No, not at
Really? No.
all, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, it did insofar as like, hey, we want
You're
to have a
happy now.
kid, like,
Yeah.
and we want to have that as like the foundation before we go into this. Not that you have to, but I do feel like we just got really lucky with being able to. Because yeah, I think I reflect if Emily and I had had a kid, in year 1 or 2 of our marriage,
Oh my
would have been
god.
totally fine. But
Totally.
totally fine.
Super fine.
It would have been very challenging, and
Yeah.
that's just the reality of our communication styles and yeah, all sorts of different relationship things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So other new traits. Yeah, my jokes are spot on. That was number one. Number two, I'm really showing up well here. Number three, traits. Yeah, probably just those two.
That's it. It's the
Hmm.
only way he's changed.
I mean, I really don't think I've changed that much. My circumstances have changed a lot. I do have different emotions. I think going back to that joy piece, it is interesting to look at a little human get such a hit of dopamine, and then you look at your partner and kind of like, I don't
Mhm.
smile at you like I smile at my kid.
Yeah.
You just don't.
It's just like the waves are so much bigger now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they hit you at the weirdest times too. And so I feel like you can't plan. If you're on a trip, you kind of the trajectory, you know what you can get excited about. But when you have a kid, it can just hit you at different times, and
Mm-hmm.
the peaks and valleys can
Yeah.
shift a lot.
Do you feel like there's a lack of support for dads?
Just kind of sounds like BS. I'm like, well, for me, no. Like, I've got such a good circle. I'm not very active about seeking support. And so I don't even know, but I'm just like, well, I don't know. Do anything about it if you need more support. Like, go talk to your people. I haven't gone down an internet browse of like, what are some support things for dads? And
So for you, you don't like you feel supported.
yeah, I do.
I
And
also think
yeah.
that's partly because you're in a really flexible job.
Yeah, could be. Also think that once Kieran gets again beyond the support staff phase, I feel like I will need that group of dads to kind of like talk through parenting stuff. And again, I think, it really starts with me and Emily being on the same page, but I'm sure it'll be helpful to bounce ideas off. And so, yeah, I don't know. You guys have been a huge support.
I have a question.
Yeah, you go.
What makes you feel valued? as a father and a husband?
Sex, for sure. As a husband,
Yeah, we know.
that one. As a
Yeah.
father, well, I'll get your rebuttal after. So, as a father, valued as a father, there are moments where I'll catch you, Emily, looking at me, and I just feel like, oh, she's just like looking at me being a dad. And I don't say anything in the moment, but that is huge for me. I'm just being a father holding my son, and you're watching me
Like an
help this.
adoration.
Yeah. And I just love it. And I didn't want to, when you look at a thing and then it kind of is like, oh, it's a little different. But so me bringing it up, I hope it doesn't change it. But like, that's huge for me. I think being a father.
It's just such like a noble thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know that like you couldn't exhibit those traits before in those ways. Even though you don't feel like life has changed.
Yeah. If I've learned anything from this conversation, do we have a son? I'm not quite sure. Hey, I think we were at the hospital for a
Something's keeping
long
me up at
time.
night,
But like,
but
what else? I don't know. As I was, looking through the questions, I was just like, huh, this just hits dads a lot differently than it does
yeah,
moms.
I think I'm learning that right now because I
me
feel
too.
such like a fire in my gut to be like, okay, I think we should be doing better from a legislation point. I mean, there are so many things that we ought to be doing better to make this easier and also more attainable. There's so many reasons to make motherhood and fatherhood and forming a family more of a central point of our civilization right now. I don't think I feel good about having that conversation or really focusing so much on moms without having dads participate in the conversation. And it's just so funny. I live with you. We talk all the time, and it's just different for you.
Yeah, and even like my immediate thought when you just said that, I'm like, those are all external. Like, what can you and I do to not control the situation, but make it be how we want it to go? And there's just certain things where it's like it's all up to us. Like
Yes.
the legislation. I mean, and even that impacts dads differently.
When you were saying, "Oh, I don't feel like I needed I'm lacking in support," I was thinking in my head, "Are you joking? You worked every single day." I came home from, being awake for 5 days straight and giving and delivering that baby. We were in the hospital for 5 days. After that, finally we get home. We had to go to the ER that week, and you worked every single day of that week.
And like we
You
talked
didn't
about recently, I don't remember
you
a
don't remember.
single
You
day.
didn't put in 8-hour days, but you were running payroll. You were like, you have this flexible job, but you still were showing up in your private home sphere as well as your professional one. So to me, I'm like, you're not asking for more support, like
I mean, that's
time
also
to
just
be
being a
with your
dad.
family.
That's being a dad too, I feel like because our bodies aren't going through as much as a woman's body is, it's kind of like, well, where would the cutoff point be? Right? Like, is it, and I know that, there's different paternal leaves and all this stuff. And it would be great to like have it be matched with your partner. So like you guys can do, but maybe it's also good sometimes to have the partners be apart early on potentially and not like in a way that's out of their control. Like it would be nice to have some employment support or whatever that looks like.
You were crucial to me in those days, those hours you spent at work or those little bits of time you were working from home. And I just want to go on record saying that your presence, for the most part, in our lives as I was recovering and you were getting to know Kieran was crucial. So, for any dad out there, because I often hear about dads putting their careers over their home
Hmm.
life, if it's possible, take as much time for your wife, your partner, your child away from the office as possible.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing and what I've just observed in life is I think the important support dads need is support for them to advocate for the birthing mother.
Mm.
Like I think maybe it's just that they need the support to better serve the birthing mother. Because, I mean, I think about how much I can power through on a normal day if I haven't just given birth. Like, yeah, I could be super sleep deprived for 5 days and go to work. If you don't have hormones going all over it, like, yeah, it'd be shitty, but fishy. That's not any better in that context. That was actually worse.
Good save,
Sorry, Mom.
Cal.
Be really unfortunate, but like not horrible, right? Like not the ups and downs of birthing a child. So, I mean, yeah, how do dads understand how to start being that supportive husband that can advocate for your partner? So maybe it's still just supportive the mom. Like at
And
least
that's
in
why,
Kyle's
yeah,
experience.
Yeah.
that's what all came down to for me because, yeah, I'm like, buck up, dude. Like, I don't know. If you're tired, plan a nap or like communicate with Emily, like, hey, I'm actually really tired. Can you do this? Or, can you be on duty tonight for the whole night or something? But yeah, mostly I'm just kind of like, you're not doing fish, bro. Like, your wife just did this whole thing. Shut up and like go do something for her.
How have you seen Emily and or I, if you have comments, change through matrescence?
I think the largest one, and for the listeners at home, you won't be able to see my face, but before having a child, Emily never kind of did. I don't know how Callie described this face. Kind of like downturned mouth, like it's the like when you see a little puppy.
Oh, that's what
When you
you're
see a little,
trying to do?
yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
I was
didn't
like,
come through.
Like
wow.
the simper, like the or
Yeah,
not.
when you see a little puppy, like oh baby. My wife, before having a kid, never did that ever. And then we had a kid, and I remember, I don't know, like, obviously she was looking at him, and I saw her do this face, and I was like, who's that? Is
That's
that
funny.
Emily? So that was really
Huge.
impactful for me. Because it
Going
honestly
deep with
was.
Kyle Erickson.
Oh.
It seriously was, because it just, to me, it exhibited all of these feelings and emotions that she had looking at our son in a way that prior to that, she never, to me at least, seemed to express that in that way. And so honestly, it was huge for me to see her do that. And I still haven't recovered. So if you ask me the question again, I might have more answers, but I really,
What about
I like that
Cal?
one.
for both of you, I mean, Cal, you've always been a tank, and I just feel like you just keep
Tank.
tanking.
You do.
Not tanking Sal, but like you're just a powerhouse. And I
Mhm.
look at Emily and myself, and like, we have a kid. Oh, so hard. One kid.
I think about that to my prior self. Kevin and I the other day, we were like, we thought that was hard. And
Yeah.
now it's like we were down one kid the other day because he was at one of them. I don't remember which one was at a grandparents. And we were like, this is amazing.
Yeah, and I think you guys are just so huge for me because you're just an example of a family in my close circle that I can really experience what is having a family like, and I feel really emotionally connected with both you and Kevin
Mm-hmm.
in a way where I can feel that, and I don't always put it to words really well, but it's this sense, and so yeah, you guys, you're just tanks, and it puts me in a spot where I'm like, we have a kid, go cry downstairs, like I don't know, get over it. We have
Are you
a
talking
kid.
to yourself or me or Kieran?
Verdict out. I don't know. Um, it's just, and it's so that I think we're always kind of in this, not in on the sidelines per se. We have a child, but it's to have you guys for me is just huge. Just to watch you exist and know what's coming if we have a second kid, if we're able to just get second kid. I'm just like, I'll be like, oh, 54-hour labor. That sounds nice.
I really hope to God you never have a labor like that again.
I know, me too.
But-
Say we can do it.
We will.
yeah, you did it once. You can do it again. Oof.
We will not. We will
We
stop
won't.
that.
Let's not do that.
Well, so what I'm hearing is that there's been no change really in your life since becoming a dad. So basically, maybe you just
Not
have,
what he said.
you were a dad when I met you. Maybe you've just always
Mind
kind of been a
alone.
dad.
Dormant. But still there.
Dormant dad.
DT.
This new name.
Listen, for all of our listeners in college, I loved dating. I dated around. It was fun. Kyle actually is the first person I like super fell in love with. Like when I was first dating him and was like, wow, I didn't actually want to get married till I was 35, but like this feels different and real. At the time was a serial dater because I had this thing that I called like the baby test, which was like, okay, if I were to have a baby with this person, would I be thrilled to like pass on their genetics to the world? If the answer is no, then probably I shouldn't give them my time. Or like B, do I think that they would be a good nurturer? Like if we had this baby and then I died or something, would I trust them to nurture a small human well? If the answer is no, then I shouldn't allow them to nurture me. And Kyle, I immediately was like,
for the listeners at home, I put Emily's socks on every morning.
For her.
Nurture, baby, nurture.
I was just saying you passed the baby test with flying colors. So.
Which is funny because you like didn't really want a baby.
I mean, it was all metaphorical for me.
Like,
it was just like
a test for someone that's like not a baby person.
I can be like kind of black and white. I don't know. Like I was just trying to protect myself because I'm like, emotions, attraction can be rampant. So for me, I was just like, that's a clear line. Cool.
I love that this is on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So like if this makes the podcast, anytime that I just need like a little pick me up. Just be like, oh, let's go to minute 58, blah, blah, blah. And listen to Emily just bestow this beautifulness on me.
Like play it out loud for her when she's annoyed with you.
I'll put it on the speaker at home.
She'll love that.
Hey, you're mad at me? Let me play something for you.
Yeah, remember this? God. Well, thanks, Kyle. You were our first male on the Real Mom Hub.
For the listeners at home, I take off my suit jacket and I take off my parrot hat and I say, thank you so much for having me. This was lovely. And it's so great to see both of you. Emily, I'll see you soon, maybe. But no, thanks for having me on. Love it.
Yeah, housekeeping we need.
No, man, I'm just sitting in gratitude. Love you both.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Real Mom Hub. Our music is by Naomi O'Leary. You can find us on social at The Real Mom Hub. We're not the authority or even very educated on the medical issues discussed. Do your own research, talk to an expert, make your own decisions, and call us if you learn anything new.
If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram, or better yet, subscribe to our newsletter. If you don't, that's fine. We can all move on. Our purpose here is community, so if we've resonated with you, tell a friend.
Thanks for listening.